Imagine you have a network of eyes and ears around the world. People at airports, in hotel lobbies, and on telephone switchboards. Well, you do, in this case, as we continue to follow the adventures of Kevin and Jed as they sink deeper into the fluffy white mud of the minefield of cocaine smuggling. Good morning. David McMillan here. Drug bore, arms dealer, and porridge stirrer, 40 years in the trade, man and boy. Welcome to part 5 of the trails, yet hopefully not the trials, of Jed Pontiac from Ohio, USA, and Kevin Block from Cambridge, England. As we've seen, Jed left for Colombia near on a couple of months ago, with the aim of smuggling 2 or more kilos of cocaine from South America back to his hometown. Had Jed tired of his life at the Centerville car dealership? Did he want to make a fortune? Or did he just want some fun and a challenge in his life? He crossed the border through Mexico and on to Colombia. Found himself in Cartagena, where he lost his stake money. Unlucky, but a necessary lesson for Jed in spotting the snakes. Jed's girl, Myra Pink, joined him and saved the day by selling her Rolex to fund a new buy. But for every bit of good fortune, a trap is being dug just ahead. He and Myra picked up a partner in the local Colombian girl, Karen, who arranged a few kilos and helped with the fat suit. Yes, Jed had to wear the latest Jelly Belly, a strap-on soft foam and latex pack that he sweated out in flight connections from the sea to Atlanta. So, Jed's home and free? Yes and no. His coke's still in the body pack, bouncing around now in the rental car he'd picked up for the cross-country drive to Cleveland. As for Englishman Kevin, last we saw him, he was about to land at Lisbon, his bags unseen by him since checking in at foggy Cuzco airport. That's the nearest one to the Machu Picchu ruins, you might know. The bags are important, since the coke was turned into plastic to form the suitcases themselves. Kevin has befriended a fellow passenger, an innocent-looking middle-aged Spanish businessman. Kevin figured that if it appeared that he was travelling with a respectable, older gent, less attention might be directed his way. Now let's step into the scene. And we'll stay with Kevin as he walks toward the exits with his new friend Enrico. You may recall that Kevin is without his girl on this trip. He didn't want to alarm her or put her at risk, but he failed, and this is important, to give a cover story to those he cared for, or more to the point, those who cared for him. Kevin's partner of 7 years, Carrie Kolonic, fretted at every turn. And when Kevin went dark, as he stopped checking in, Carrie turned to her brother. Bradley Kolonic works under a pile of thin paper at some government office and likes to see himself as the strong and caring older brother. Carrie told him all that Kevin was doing. More than necessary, told him of all her fears of what he might be doing, what might be going on. She expected comfort, reassurance, and perhaps a quiet inquiry through the Foreign Office where Brother Bradley works. Perhaps a check of UK travellers who had sought assistance. Or She might not want to see a printout of the Bogota City morgue tally for the week. Yet, as ever a creature of crawling fashion, Bradley shared all he knew with his new pals, some excitable and ambitious police recruits at Scotland Yard. The blue-uniformed young'uns, all quietly friends of Dorothy, told their bosses, who shrugged. The more experienced officer, knowing that information coming from family worries is often left off desk and better kept to family. Unhappy with that, Bradley then added to the story, throwing in a mix of Russian mafia, Argentinian assassins, and spiced with European port city backdrops. This finally prompted action. The UK Customs and Border Agency looked up Kevin's travel itineraries, all automatically provided by the airlines, as it is these days. Europol was sent a report to pass on. Had Carrie wanted to effectively rat out her fiancé? Not at all. But think before asking for help. Information is data. Data are like coins. They rattle around the head of the listener, either to respond with a look of concern for the teller, or in 99% of cases I've experienced, coins that drop into a machine of whirring cogs and pinballs. As Kevin boarded his connection at Madrid, he was observed. The arrest was planned at Lisbon. Kevin had spent almost 2 hours chatting up the passenger next to him on the flight, a person Kevin determined was a model of rectitude, and one in whose company he could safely collect his bags and walk to freedom, crossing one of those invisible lines we call borders, and a line in Kevin's future. Umberto Delgado Airport. Kevin walked through the finger, staying close and talking to Enrico. Radios crackled, communications were good. The spring of the trap was tensioned. However, there were other police at the airport that day. A special task force with a 14-month-long investigation into a high-profile target of the drug world. Who? Well, at the exits they waited too. Yet, like groups of termites, competing police bosses identify each other by smell before sight, and the two groups identified each other within seconds. "Are you here for the mule?" asked one side. "Mule?" scoffed the special team. "We're here for the conductor del equipo de mulas, Enrico dos Santos." Yes, the mild-mannered Enrico, the beard chosen by Kevin to safely take him through the airport, was the target of the special force. Did they plan to arrest Mr. Big, arrest Enrico? Not at all. They wanted to follow him. They used their higher position to bludgeon the minor duo sent to stop Kevin into total inactivity. In fact, they were to leave immediately. A small but voluble discussion broke out. Time was wasted, and time enough for Kevin and Enrico to reach the exits. Enrico, no fool, quickly spotted the huddle and made a courteous offer to Kevin that he would not ordinarily have made, to share Enrico's limousine into town. So, in a sense, though for entirely the wrong reasons, Kevin was correct. Enrico did safely guide him through the landing. Unfortunately, Kevin gained the additional baggage of having police in a half-dozen European countries believe he was an operative for the feared Enrico clan. Halfway across the world, Jed Pontiac is in better circumstances. He is on an 11-hour journey by car from Atlanta to Cleveland, Ohio. Behind the wheel of his rented 2018 Cadillac ATS-5 coupe, Cruising along I-75 north, passing through Chattanooga, Lexington, and Columbus with almost 6 kilos of near-pure coke in the trunk. Living the American dream. Myra Pink, whose wild guile and her past. Without this, the deal would never have taken shape. And she is not with him. She's not with Jed. Something of an issue between them now. Of course, Jed claims it was for her own safety, a story so old and time-worn that the phrase, "You've done enough, darling," has become repulsive in many ears. She has flown ahead and waits impatiently at home base. Apart from any other consideration, she really wanted to conduct further tests on the goods. For Jed, apart from any other consideration, as he sips coffee at a 49er truck stop at the edge of Daniel Boone National Forest, he knows that the 6 kilos would drain to 5 with Myra at his side. Besides, he's tested thoroughly himself, the jelly-belly now bearing more liposuction scars than an LA socialite. When Jed phones through to announce that he's tired and will take a night in Lexington, Myra becomes restless. It is to Carl Buttigieg, Jed's friend in Cleveland, that Myra turns for solace. You might recall that Carl had some $8,000 of Jed's money that he was meant to send to Colombia. Carl had legal problems at the time. If you call 2 squad cars cutting you off at a payphone a problem. The money went to another friend, Wayne Mange, who had his own needs and plans for the cash. It was never sent, and as you know, Myra solved the problem. So, it was with a burdened heart that she finds Carl, who is again a free man, his lawyer having solved the problems of the outstanding warrants. Despite Carl's shortcomings, after a boozy night with Myra, he talks his way into being part of the grand scheme. After all, he is the best man for contacts to move that little load. Of course he is. Yeah. Jed arrives in Cleveland, is reunited with Myra, and, stage right, enters Carl. Carl's old workmate in the car-stealing business. He lives out back, from a ramshackle collection of industrial buildings, on a thumb of land called Irishtown Bend that pokes into the river. Before the welcome home and congratulations breakfast is finished, Jed is told a meeting has been set for the next day in that very area. 5 kilos will go, says Carl, snapping his fingers just like that. $25,000 per kilo is mentioned as a good price. Well, Jed and Myra have had a long trip. Making 100K on the gig could be called a good thing in one hit. But is it? And what does Myra think? And what is wrong with this picture? As you contemplate that, and the particular geography of Irishtown Bend, let's check on Kevin from the UK, who has a problem. One I've lived with quite pleasantly in the past, but one for which he may need a chemist. His cocaine is compounded into the plasticized shells, the casings of his suitcases. For Kevin, he's won the prize on the surface. The people who gave him the bags in Lima have assumed he was arrested for now, and he has returned to Europe safely. Now, a sensible fellow would put the bags in a safe place, return home to sniff the egg, and determine how goes the day, then study a little on extracting cocaine that has been set in polymers. Where to find that out? Here on this channel, that's where. But very few people know of me or of the channel, so Kevin is in the dark. He must blunder about. Even so, luck again is on his side. On the journey into Lisbon City, Enrico this time chats up Kevin. He wants him around long enough to find out why what he thought he saw at the airport was, in fact, what he saw. All those police, and 2 sets of them. Enrico calls his son en route, so by the time they arrive at the Riverview, a fine little hotel along Llano Las Verdes, the big man's least loved son is in attendance. "Check him out," says Dad, before disappearing. You might be wondering why Enrico and some family are in Portugal. After all, they are from Malaga in Spain. Well, because despite all the unity, supposedly, in Europe, move your operations across borders and you'll push up the price of investigations. At a certain point, the funding will dry up. As the cost rises, as did the chase of Robert Duval in THX 1138. Let's clear Kevin's position. He has the bindle, and it is likely the guys who gave it to him will check the police lockups in Lima and then know he did not get arrested. Soon they will know where he travelled to. That aside, he has some new Spanish friends in Lisbon, and a boutique bedroom for the night to decide whether to return to the UK. Before turning in for the night, he had dinner with the old man's son, Noel. No mention of smuggling and drugs during the meal. Kevin did have the sense not to mention his hometown of Cambridge, but not enough to know the airlines have it all from the first booking. Sleep well, Kevin. Jed, in his hometown of Cleveland, is not happy either. He's arrived back from his mission to find Myra, has arranged a deal with Carl. He feels pushed, driven, in a corner. Besides, Carl is known to be unlucky. 2 police cars appeared to arrest him, and both simply by a chance sighting. Who knows what the real deal might be between Carl and Myra, love of Jed's life? And who knows the real deal that awaits him in Irishtown Bend come morning? After such an argument as they had with Myra, he'd normally be sleeping on the sofa, if it were not that Myra is keeping close, yet both have been testing the goods again. So in the 3 a.m. darkness, they rest in bed, sleep a series of mini cliff drops. Only the fine quality of the Charlie has allowed some useful half-sleep at all. Of course, if the quality were that of the low-grade pub grub street raps that began this noble quest from 2 sides of the world, then even fleeting tranquility would be sacrificed on the anvil of ephedrine adulterants, that curse. Anyway, Jed will be sad to see his fake beer gut go, well, its contents. As he drifts, he makes a note to himself to set aside a few ounces of the prime cuts for his personal supply. A note that needs no yellow square on any fridge to stick. Rest well, Jedediah. Just a week ago, I was speaking by Skype with an early reader who since employs me for the occasional counselling session, the details of which remain entirely encrypted, confidential, but perhaps surprisingly personal rather than criminal. Anyway, well, he was asking if Jed and Kevin are based on real people. Of course, they are real, but transposed in time. The locations updated, the names changed, features swapped. But he'll find that our youthful explorers are given advice at crucial moments. which rarely happens in real life. Just before my retirement, when travel was difficult, I did earn some gratitude by giving mid-operation advice. At one time, I most strongly suggested that the controllers of a couple who were travelling by sea must disembark at their next port, Cape Verde, their last opportunity before reaching Europe and docking on their final stop. You see, they were a young couple, late 20s, alone in the deep blue sea except for an ocean of grey-haired saga ship voyagers. What do you think the ship's security does on those trips with those placid passengers? I asked them. Search for lost dentures, winched jammed Zimmer frames from stern hatches, settle scores between the flying spittle of bridge players. Indeed they do, unless they have the oddity of two young passengers who seemed barely fed rather than newlywed. Take the cargo off and secure it at Piata, the capital. Let them return and send others to fetch the goods, I insisted. Well, I was being paid to be insistent. Did my clients listen? Did they act? No, they let the misfits travel on. Some excuse about communications, but that could have been solved. The pair docked and were pounced upon by officials. Of course, it was the shipboard security that had alerted Southampton. Worse, so I found out, the young man had spilled all the beans on his plate. I was paid for my services, but found this experience most depressing. Many people listen, but rarely act. I hope that is not you. By the way, just a word on Wayne Mange. He was discharged from hospital last week. The inauguration has taken place. There was no evidence of any threat. He was naked, after all. Recovered from his wounds. Will we hear from him again? I don't know. But until next time, when we see what dawn will bring for Jed and Kevin. Good night to you.